This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
What's going on, everybody? Guys and girls, welcome back to another edition of the SmackDown review right here on the WWE Podcast. As always, I am one of the hosts of this show, Michael Ritter. You can find me on X at Michael5Ritter, on Instagram at MichaelRitter5, and also one of the hosts of the Football Function Podcast, available on all your podcasting platforms, including the one that you're listening to this show on right now, including the Patreon app, which is the best way to listen to any podcast, especially if they offer an ad-free experience, which is exactly what you get on this show and that show. But nonetheless, I am looking forward to breaking down this episode of SmackDown with you guys. Just a little bit of a disclaimer. At the very beginning of the show, I kind of want to get it out there. This is not going to be a very long episode. Definitely not as long as what they've been in the past. Who knows? Rants could go on. I could get rambling. But I mean, it's 11 o'clock p.m. right now, and Elimination Chamber starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. Just my time. Obviously, I'm Central Time Zone, so it starts even earlier if you are, the Pacific Time Zone. It starts an hour later if you're in the Eastern Time Zone. Who knows what time it's going to be in Australia? To be completely honest, I am not sure the time difference as far as the actual pay-per-view is concerned, like what time it's going to be. Is it going to be a daytime event there in Australia? Is it going to be a nighttime show? I truly do not know, but nonetheless, definitely looking forward to it. Either way, I'm not going to be watching it live. I'm going to be watching it as soon as I wake up, whenever that is. But I thought, for whatever snowball chance that somebody might listen to this show before the event, because I truly anticipate, the SmackDown review to probably not get the downloads that it normally does on a regular week, because that's just how it works whenever there's a pay-per-view the very next day, if they, go on the Saturday route. But not only that, this pay-per-view starts so freaking early, like it's literally going to be over by the time I actually wake up. So I highly doubt that whenever somebody wakes up tomorrow, the first thing they're going to say is, you know what, I should listen to the SmackDown review. Like, there's a fresh pay-per-view on Peacock that you could go watch. So I fully understand why you wouldn't listen to the show. But I still have an obligation and I still have a responsibility here on the WWE Podcast, and that is to review SmackDown. Rain, sleet, snow, it doesn't matter. So I just felt like, me personally, I would rather get this episode out of the way and record it before the show starts, like before Elimination Chamber actually happens. Like, I want to get my predictions, because that's what I'm going to do at the end of this. Get my predictions for the Elimination Chamber out into the universe before the card actually starts, because, it just wouldn't be the same. Even if the downloads aren't going to be what they normally are, for those of you that are loyal listeners that are going to listen to this show, I at least want you to know that it was recorded the night before Elimination Chamber and that the work was actually put in to try to make sure that it came out in a timely manner. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the SmackDown review. It was a go-home show, a pre-taped SmackDown, so you do have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. I do feel like it was actually put together pretty well, just whenever you factor in the video packages that were shown backstage. We got a couple from the Judgment Day, a couple from the Bloodline. I just feel like they did a pretty good job spacing this show out and making it feel like it wasn't pre-taped. You put the kind of matches that were on the show to start it, to end it, when you look at, obviously, Tiffany Stratton versus Liv Morgan to kick the show off, and then closing the show was Drew McIntyre and LA Knight. So we did get a lot of juicy stuff here on this episode of SmackDown, despite it being pre-taped. But because it was pre-taped, whenever you look at it from, the big picture approach, you kind of understand, okay, that's why this didn't happen, that's why this person didn't actually come out, and, things kind of played out the way that they did, and that has a lot to do with why this is going to be a short episode, of, the SmackDown review, because you kind of, there wasn't that 15-minute segment where we got, a killer promo from Roman Reigns and The Rock, who was just decimating the state of Utah. We didn't get a juicy talk show that has a guest come out and, a brawl ensues. Next thing you know, we got like a regular tag match, a 6-man tag match, something like that. This was pretty much just small segment, video package, progressive match flow, small video package, maybe a backstage interview, another match. They did a good job kind of balancing the show out a little bit. So we're going to start from the beginning, and like I mentioned, this show was pre-taped in Salt Lake City, Utah, the same place that SmackDown was at last week, actually live. And it aired on February 23rd, 2024. Whenever you listen to this, it's probably going to be February 24th, possibly the 25th. Who knows, when you're actually consuming this, but I highly doubt it's going to be available on the 23rd. So it's going to be at least the 24th when you listen to this. But nonetheless, this show started off with a one-on-one match, Liv Morgan versus Tiffany Stratton. You see Bianca Belair watching from ringside. She kind of gets involved a little bit later because Tiffany Stratton just doing what she's been doing since she's been up on the SmackDown roster. She actually smacks Bianca Belair in the face, and she had a pretty nice roll-up on Liv Morgan. That's one thing I will say. She secures the win with a roll-up, and we typically don't praise roll-ups here on the WWE podcast, but this one was an actual, okay, damn, they aren't kicking out of that. She absolutely folded Liv Morgan, and Tiffany Stratton is constantly praised for her power and the fact that she's, the buff Barbie. That's what I've heard. A commentator, maybe it was Corey Graves or Wade Barrett, somebody said that, and it makes sense. It kind of fits the type of billing that she's had. Although I will say, maybe an NXT fan, someone that, has been familiar with Tiffany Stratton for her entire career in WWE and NXT, has she always been a heel? For some reason, I guess I just thought she was the babyface whenever I would see her highlights, just, whether it's on Twitter or X or just anywhere on the internet. Anytime I saw her, I guess I just assumed in my mind that she was a babyface. Her music kind of sounds like a babyface theme. It does not sound like a heel theme song whatsoever. Sometimes that kind of just, it is what it is. Even when Becky Lynch kind of went back and forth, her song was always a babyface song. Eventually they had to switch Bayley's because her song was clearly a babyface song, and now the one that she has now is a little bit more, can go either way now that she's kind of transitioning back to being a babyface. But one thing I noticed with Tiffany Stratton is that her music doesn't really match her personality. It really doesn't match her attitude, I guess is a better word, because it's not like it's a bad song. I don't think that the theme song itself needs to be switched because it's not up to par. I just think it doesn't really match her as a character, as a wrestler. I don't know. That's just kind of my quick thought that I had on this one. But she does get the win over Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan looks great, both physically and in the ring, despite missing some time. This is what she calls her revenge tour. So, be on the lookout for Liv Morgan possibly having a pretty big 2024 as we get closer to WrestleMania. Is there a women's battle royal? They have the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania. I was curious what they do with all the women who aren't involved in matches or they don't have a program for either of the night at WrestleMania. Just kind of write that down. Maybe we'll touch back on that here in a few weeks. Continuing on here, we get Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre backstage. It's still weird seeing Drew McIntyre on SmackDown so frequently. You guys know I'm not even going to mention the B word, the BS word, I guess I should say, that's supposed to keep certain wrestlers on their specific brands, but it's so close to Elimination Chamber. Obviously, he had a match on SmackDown tonight, but that just kind of, makes me ask the question, why the hell did he have a match on SmackDown tonight? Now, I get it. Pre-tape show. Last week, he was on SmackDown, so, they just kind of had him in a match with LA Knight to keep the crowd happy and to provide this content for us to use this week on SmackDown. But it just kind of, it's like going in circles. I'm never going to be a fan of seeing superstars go to their, opposite brand. It's never something that I enjoy seeing. But Lashley actually takes a pretty good shot at Drew. He brings up the WrestleMania 37 match whenever he beat Drew. So these two are probably going to have a nice encounter, an interaction, if you will, in the Elimination Chamber. I'll go out and say that right now. Keeping things backstage, we go to the Bloodlines locker room. And it was actually pretty funny. I'll give Jimmy Uso credit, man. He's really starting to come into his own in this new version of himself. And obviously, you guys can correct me if you think that this is a little bit of an off comparison, and I might be, just completely off the radar with this, but doesn't he kind of sort of seem like one of those hyenas in The Lion King that were just kind of weird? And Roman Reigns is Scar. He's that evil lion that, has that dark complexion, the black hair. And you look at Jimmy Uso and Solo and all the other members of the bloodline that have come and gone along the years. But specifically Jimmy and the way that he's acting, he just has that hyena vibe where he's always, laughing. He thinks things are funny. He thinks that he's, getting in with the boss, but the boss kind of just looks at him. I don't know. I kind of noticed that today. I was like, man, this is giving me Lion King vibes. And it also could just be because I'm a 90s kid. And the Lion King came out, obviously, in the 90s. Side note, the 90s and the 2000s, man, elite TV shows and movies. Like, damn near the best back-to-back decade when you're talking about movies that were released. But way off topic, and obviously I'm very biased when I say that, but man, the 90s and the 2000s, some elite television and movies that I can just think back, and even if that's all I was able to watch, if no new shows came out and I only had the catalog from the 90s and the 2000s, I truly think that I would be okay, and I would be able to make it work. But anyways, getting back to the show here, Jimmy and Roman Reigns are kind of going back and forth about what happened on Monday Night Raw. They're referencing the quote-unquote play, deciding who drew it up. Was it Paul Heyman that drew it up and gave the orders to Jimmy Uso and he executed? Or was it Roman Reigns who ended up, was the mastermind behind it all? We do find out that it was Roman Reigns. He was the one that drew it up, and according to Jimmy Uso, he scored the touchdown. He tries to stick his hand out and obviously gets left hanging by not only Roman Reigns, but Solo Sikoa as well. And that was just and the camera kind of pans away and then goes over to Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. Great stuff. Obviously, I like seeing this version of Jimmy Uso, especially as time goes on, because you can tell he's getting more and more comfortable. If we get him fully, I guess in mid-season form, gelling in this character as we head into WrestleMania, because I already feel like Jey Uso is well entrenched, got his feet planted on Monday Night Raw and, doing what he's doing, venturing off as a singles wrestler. And I think that if Jimmy can kind of get at least somewhat in that same ballpark, we could really be in store for a phenomenal match. And I think the face-to-face that we got to start the Royal Rumble between Jimmy and Jey was, a masterclass, whoever was responsible for that. But also the face-off that we got with, Jimmy looking like he was representing like a red theme, and Jey Uso had, the white and blue, and it was such a good visual. And these are the types of matches that are, reserved strictly for WrestleMania. And it takes me back, like, even though, these two are on different brands, I'm all for brand versus brand at WrestleMania, as long as it's not, just spilling over week after week after week. And I know Jimmy was just on Monday Night Raw. The main reason why I am not commenting on that is because I don't watch Monday Night Raw week in, week out. So, I don't know if he's there every single week, but I know Jey isn't making an appearance on SmackDown. So I don't necessarily see these two interact outside of pay-per-views. And it just kind of takes me back to, what was it? Was it WrestleMania 21? Or 20. I think there might have been one at WrestleMania 20, Raw versus SmackDown match. Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar for sure. Undertaker versus Kane on WrestleMania 20. And were those the only two brand versus brand matches on that card? Because I know the following year, WrestleMania 21, I think that's whenever we got Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, which was a phenomenal match, like literally one of the best matches I've ever seen in my life, outside of a random Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle. Literally the best wrestling match I've ever seen in my life. It was like on a Judgment Day pay-per-view back in like 2002, 2001, something like that. But, oh my gosh, if you can go back and find that match, like I promise you, you won't have to confirm with me, is it this one, is it this one? If you just find Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle and you go back and you watch all their matches from that time period, you'll know exactly which one I'm talking about. Because, you're talking about a technical wrestling showcase, a submission showcase, And that's a tongue twister, by the way. So don't come at me because that is a very tough one to say. But either way, guys, I do not know what got me on that rabbit hole. I think just referencing the brand versus brand matches. And we kind of got to talking about Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, one of the best matches. Okay, now I'm realizing how I got there. But you see what I'm saying. If done right, you can, create some very memorable Raw versus SmackDown matches, especially if they're taking place at WrestleMania. But the play, quote unquote, that was drawn up on Monday Night Raw, it really did cost Jey Uso the Intercontinental Championship. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a report that he was supposed to win that match. Something changed between that morning and, when the show went on the air, that Jey Uso was not going to win. Do your research if, you want to find out more about that whole situation. But that's just what I heard from a little birdie. So do with that what you will. But me personally, I just think that would have been a very questionable decision, taking the title off of Gunther. I feel like Gunther is a lock to lose his belt at WrestleMania. He's had it for so long. Like, you can't have the top two belts be babysat this long. And Gunther defends, he defends his championship. Him and Roman Reigns it's not apples to apples here when you're talking about these guys. So I don't want to just throw him into that same bucket and just saying, hey, he's had a long title reign, but it's been pretty underwhelming. Gunther is bringing back prestige to that Intercontinental Championship, and I just personally feel like it's not the same at all. So even though it might seem like it because they both had their championships for like over 2 years now, Gunther is a little bit in a different situation because he's on television regularly. His character is just a little bit different. Roman Reigns is clearly in a tier of his own, in a league of his own. But I do think it is pretty safe to bet that Gunther's going to be dropping that championship pretty soon. And I just kind of put a little highlighter towards WrestleMania, depending on who's going to be challenging him, because I do think that Jay's going to be busy, so probably not going to get that rematch. But there's plenty of worthy upper mid-card guys that are worthy of a story like that, overcoming the odds, beating somebody as insurmountable as Gunther on a stage like WrestleMania 40. So, that's kind of just my opinion there. I think you could do a lot with Gunther at WrestleMania and using that as a springboard to get somebody else's career going the right direction very, very quickly. Moving on, we get a squash match. Oh my, the squashiest of squashes. Like, this one was not competitive whatsoever. To be completely honest, I do apologize. I did not get the young man's name that Braun Breaker speared in half to win this match. No offense by this guy. It was just an absolute bloodbath. Not literally, but you know what I'm saying. Braun Breaker is such a bright spot. He is such a young, up-and-coming star on SmackDown, and I hope that he stays here. I would love to cover this dude's whole career on SmackDown. I don't know. I just think that with Roman Reigns gone so much, you need a deep mid roster. Obviously, we're not going to have what Raw has. Guys like Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre. The list kind of goes on and on when you're thinking about the top baby faces. Monday Night Raw has a really deep roster. And the fact that SmackDown is kind of more so getting the NXT call-ups, developing them a little bit more, letting them find their footing like we saw Bianca Belair do. SmackDown is a great place for NXT call-ups to come up and have success immediately. That's just one thing I've noticed. There's a trend there. One thing to point out, though, I can get used to Braun Breaker's graphics that he has before he comes out. The dog theme. Just elite graphics. And, like I said, I could definitely get used to those being on the television screen every single week. Speaking of every single week, it seems like every single week we're getting an Legado, or should I say an LDF and an LWO encounter. Whether it's backstage, whether it's ringside. This one tonight just so happened to take place backstage. We see Elektra Lopez, I believe. She's seen talking to Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde, obviously members of the LWO. She's really just distracting them because while their backs are turned and they're facing her, we see LDF, Legado del Fantasma, Angel Garza, Humberto Carrillo. They come up from behind, attack these two. They beat the hell out of them. And then you see Santos Escobar, who is, obviously one of the biggest heels in the company right now when you look at 2024. Santos is creeping up on Dominic levels of just getting some immediate heat, especially just when you look at the internet. People love to meme Santos Escobar. Whenever you obviously see the Carlito GIFs, whatever it is. I've seen that one quite a bit. Him just getting blamed for various different things that have nothing to do with wrestling. They say, who's responsible for this? And we see the video of Carlito saying Santos Escobar. So just a nice little funny internet reference there. But Santos does say that, they abandoned him when he's talking to Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde as they are being pretty much held down and forced to look at Santos in the face. And he was just letting them have it. He does say, hey, you guys let me down. You guys abandoned me. All that good stuff. Start speaking a little bit of Spanish, and that's whenever I kind of fall out, because I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I do not speak Spanish. So I had to take a little bit of I can see what's going on here. I can see their body language, but I don't know every word what's being communicated there. So anyways, continuing on here, we get another match. This one a tag team. We get Dominic Mysterio and JD McDonough versus Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. And I remember talking to Frankie last week when we discussed what their team name was going to be. Apparently, it's British Strong Style. I thought it was agreed to be something else. They could have changed it. We've seen that happen numerous times. Remember whenever they tried to make Paige and I think Charlotte and Becky the submission sorority? Yeah, they had to switch that up really quick. There's been other names too. I can't think of many off the top of my head, but if you were actually give me an opportunity, I could think of some times that they kind of pulled the trigger and pulled the plug on a couple names that maybe just didn't get the traction that they were hoping for. But British Strong Style do get the win here. Of course, we get Judgment Day nonsense post-match. Speaking of Judgment Day nonsense, did you guys see the R-Truth video that he posted where he said he was in Austria and he went to the hotel, went to the arena, nobody's there, what the hell's going on? Like, I'm telling you, man, R-Truth is in his bag. It doesn't matter. He's making the most out of damn near every single situation that he finds himself in. And whenever he does that, obviously it's creating A1 content. Like, I am thoroughly enjoying this. And when you factor in, like I mentioned, I'm enjoying Jimmy Uso and the fact that he's kind of a different version. It's almost like a cringe humor with Jimmy, and it's more of like a legitimate R-Truth is doing some great stuff right now, and he's really got the crowd behind him. If you hear any R-Truth chant, they are not quiet. Like, it's very clear that he has the fans behind him. Another thing we saw here was Dakota Kai. She got attacked backstage. She's obviously she's limping. She has a WWE medical staff member on each side of her, kind of helping her walk. But that's really all we see at that point. And then obviously we get the confirmation. Her and Bayley are talking in the trainer's room, and she says that it was damage control that attacked her. Bayley pretty upset about that news. You could tell she's kind of flustered. She does tell her, she's going to do something about it. But Dakota says, look, I understand. I wouldn't have trusted me either, but you and I together are going to make this right. Like, she's pretty much saying, like, hey, let's join forces. And as this was going on, I was kind of thinking in my head, like, are they trying to swerve us? Like, is Dakota behind something? Because we haven't seen any damage control attack. Like, obviously we saw Dakota kind of run at the members of damage control with a chair, but that could all be part of it. That could all be part of the work where they're trying to continue to play mind games with Bayley like they've been doing for months. And it seems like, oh no, let's make her think that she has somebody in her corner, and at the very last minute we're gonna bail. We're gonna pull the rug out from under her, and then boom, she is alone. Dakota Kai ends up doing something. See, I was kind of thinking about that and wondering, is this going to happen? But as this segment was unfolding, as we got more words from Dakota Kai and they were kind of exchanging, it did seem like it was coming from a genuine place. And that just kind of sort of makes me think it's unnecessary for them to swerve us again. Like, yes, that would add another deep layer to this brilliant long-term storyline that we've been getting for the better part of 8 months. I just still believe that we're at a place right now where we don't need that. I just think that it would be an unnecessary move. It would be an unnecessary twist in a storyline that just really doesn't need it. So I think that Dakota Kai leaving Damage Control, whether she joins Bayley, whether she goes and, rejoins Tegan Nox and they, I guess, have a resurrection with their tag team, Candice LeRae, I know she has history with some of the women on the roster outside of the women in Damage Control, so there's multiple different avenues that we could see Dakota Kai go. But I just think that having her go back to Damage Control after all this just would be a backwards move. And the storyline is developing perfect with this Dakota Kai twist. Let's not do another one. That was just kind of my opinion on that. We get a tag team match here next. Street Profits versus the Final Testament. Specifically the Authors of Pain in a nice little rivalry, a grudge match here. These teams hate each other. They've been going at it for the better part of like a month now. Week in, week out, just attacking people. The Street Profits do nearly get the win after Montez Ford hits a splash from the heavens, but Razor broke up the pin, and the Authors of Pain pretty much just take over at that point, and they do run away with this one, obviously, with some shenanigans from the Final Testament, which just, that's going to happen. As long as they have that numbers advantage, they have a group of 5. It's going to be tough to match up with them, and I'm all for it. I want to see this group kind of rise up, get pushed, if you will, and let's see what they got. Why not? Like, what do you got to lose at this point? We've seen multiple people in this group. In fact, we've seen almost all of these people fired at one point, right? Am I wrong there? Didn't Karrion Kross and Scarlett get let go and then brought back once Triple H was put in charge? Kind of the same thing happened with Authors of Pain. They were gone. Next thing you know, they're back. So why not try to squeeze all the juice out of this? And let's push these guys. Let's see if they can get some crowd reaction, be somewhat of a dominant faction. And getting wins over the Street Profits is definitely something that you can hang your hat on as a tag team, given that you've been gone for so long, and the Street Profits have really made a name for themselves when you've been gone. So yeah, shout out to the Authors of Pain for getting this win. We kind of had a discussion in the Discord as to which one's which. Now, I mistakenly said that Razor was the shorter one that has more of the bald or the balder, rounder head. And Akam was the taller one that has, the slick back hairstyle that is just more, I guess, he's not quite as round. He's more tall, and you could tell he would play like tackle if he was on an offensive line. And Akam, the actual Akam, would be like a guard, an interior lineman. But I mistakenly got their names messed up and switched. So just to be clear and clear the air, Razor is the one with the slick back hair. He's the bigger one. Akam is the shorter one with the round head. And, you can probably tell by now which one's which, just in your head by hearing my poor descriptions of them. But I just feel like that was worthy of a discussion here, because I don't think that WWE really elaborates on who is who. They don't have a name tag. They never really cut promos. They're always together. And when they are together, we just see AOP. That's all that pops up on the screen. We don't see them individually recognized for who they are. So shout out to the AOP, like I said, for coming back and coming back strong. Another Bloodline segment here. Heyman brings Grayson Waller into the Bloodline's locker room. And Roman Reigns says that he wants to tell him something, but it's for his ears only. And this is the last time we see Roman Reigns on the show. It's the last time we, get any type of Bloodline involvement. Now, what was he going to, what is he going to tell Grayson Waller? Because obviously Grayson Waller has a Waller effect on the Elimination Chamber card that's going to feature Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. They're probably going to talk about what happened at the press conference. Probably going to elaborate a little bit on, the whole Rock and Roman Reigns thing. It's going to be a pretty good show. I truly imagine that the Grayson Waller effect will be one of the bigger, more enjoyable parts of the entire Elimination Chamber card. So, I think that tomorrow we'll probably find our answer. Grayson Waller might tease it a little bit whenever he's on the Grayson Waller effect. He might just say, look, Roman Reigns told me something about both of you guys that I'm not supposed to say right now. And, maybe they get it out of him. Maybe it draws a wedge between them. And this could be Roman Reigns trying to get Cody Rhodes to go after Seth Rollins or something like that. So there is reasons to watch this segment. Even if you don't watch anything else on the show, I'm sure it's going to be like a 15-minute segment at most. You could probably find it on YouTube by the time you wake up. So just keep an eye out for that if you feel like that's something you're into. The last match of the night, the last segment that happened here on SmackDown was LA Knight versus Drew McIntyre. We get Logan Paul and Kevin Owens on commentary. A nice little good verbal encounter between those two, actually, as the match was going on. Kevin Owens was doing a phenomenal job on the microphone. The match does get out of hand, however, whenever Drew McIntyre throws LA Knight into Kevin Owens as he's standing there or just sitting there on the edge of the announce table. And that kind of sort of starts a brawl because then Kevin Owens goes and attacks Drew McIntyre, which makes the match end in a disqualification. All members of the Elimination Chamber end up coming out one by one. We start to see Bobby Lashley. We see Drew McIntyre. Logan Paul was obviously already in the ring. And it seems like Drew McIntyre is going to be the one left standing. However, Randy Orton comes from out of nowhere, like you would typically expect, hits that RKO, and he is the one who is left standing as SmackDown goes off the air, which takes us to Elimination Chamber. Very quick turnaround. Like I'm telling you, you don't have a lot of time to sleep in between this. Now, like Grim Reaper said, grow up. All right, now that isn't exactly what he said, but pretty much he lives in the UK, as you guys know, which a lot of our listeners, they don't live here in the United States. We have a very big following outside of the United States. So there's people who do this every single week. Like there's people who have to wake up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever it is, just to watch, whether it's a sporting event, something that happens that they want to watch, including wrestling. So the fact that we have to do this 2 or 3 times a year, maybe a little bit more. Either way, guys, you can count it on 2 hands. It's not that bad. If you don't want to wake up, just watch the replay. Don't get on Twitter. Just get on or turn on your Peacock app immediately when you wake up, and bam, you could watch the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view already completed. If you wanted to fast forward through some areas that you don't really feel like you want to watch, maybe commercial breaks, things like that, you can just speed the process up once it's already finished. Trust me. Take it from somebody who sometimes has to watch SmackDown hours after it airs or the next morning. It's nice being able to fast forward through those commercials because it can make a 2-hour show turn into an hour and 20-minute show, an hour and 30-minute show, something that's a little bit less because you're able to take out some of that stuff. So just a little bit of advice there, whether you want to take it or not, that's up to you. However, let's get into the 2024 WWE Elimination Chamber match card and start predicting this bad boy. We'll start off with the Elimination Chamber matches. Why not? Let's just, get them juicy, get them out of the way right out the gate. The men's, Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton versus Bobby Lashley versus LA Knight versus Kevin Owens versus Logan Paul. My pick is going to be Randy Orton. Second place, LA Knight, just, in hopes that maybe they can somehow push this guy. I don't feel like Kevin Owens or Logan Paul have an opportunity to win this match. I think maybe they could be heading towards facing each other at WrestleMania for that U.S. title. Something to, keep maybe on the, put it on the whiteboard as a possibility. Although I would love to see Kevin Owens win this to get a main event spot. Maybe not the main event spot, but who knows? It could be, the night one main event. I mean, it would be 3 years in a row for Kevin Owens that he was involved in the main event of WrestleMania with Stone Cold in WrestleMania 38, and then the tag team championship match against the Usos last year at WrestleMania 39. So either way, he's building up a hell of a WrestleMania resume. I'm still giving this one to Randy Orton, though. Moving on to the women's, Becky Lynch versus Bianca versus Liv versus Tiffany Stratton versus Naomi versus Raquel. I am picking Bianca Belair. I wanted to pick Becky because of who she is, what she represents, but I think Bianca just has a little bit more to offer at this point. Where we are right now, WrestleMania 40, I feel like it's just time. Let's have this dream match. They're right now they're like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, they're in the same era playing against each other. Both have championship pedigree. It's like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, who never had a chance to meet in the NBA Finals despite being in different conferences for their entire overlapping careers, And I feel like with Rhea Ripley and Bianca, let's take advantage of this. You never know what the future can bring, obviously. So you have these two women. They're as hot as they could possibly be. Let's get this match going. And I think that this could obviously, if you want to look big picture, having them compete at WrestleMania 40 this young in their career almost sets themselves up for an opportunity to have a match at WrestleMania 50 10 years from now. They're both still so young that you could easily do that. And it would just kind of play back. It would tie back to this, the fact that, WrestleMania 40, now here we are 10 years later. We could feud again, make it be for another championship. I don't really know, but I think that Bianca Belair is the right pick here, so that's who I'm going to lean with. Speaking of Rhea Ripley, we get the Women's World Championship match against Nia Jax. And, Nia Jax there's no shot she's beating Rhea Ripley. Obviously, that's not going out on a limb. That's not a bold prediction or anything like that. As irresistible, quote unquote, as Nia Jax is, I don't think that she has a chance to beat Rhea Ripley. She's going to look strong in this match. Obviously, WWE is going to do what they can to make her look like she is extremely dominant. But something in me thinks that Rhea Ripley is going to have her way in her home country in Australia against Nia Jax, and this could be one of her more decisive victories. Shout out to Rhea Ripley for getting to go home and perform in front of her hometown fans. The next championship match we have is a undisputed tag team championship match between the Judgment Day, Damian Priest and Finn Balor, versus British Strong Style, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. I am picking British Strong Style to win this, not just because it'd be a sweet moment in Elimination Chamber, and that's kind of what WWE wants to do right now, but I just really don't think the Judgment Day need the championships heading into WrestleMania. Obviously, Damian Priest has his money in the bank. Will he try to cash it in? Who knows? At this point, it's kind of getting boring seeing him have that, but I just think that, why not put it on the up-and-coming team? And as I'm thinking about it, I highly doubt. I just try to picture in my head them winning and them, holding up the championships. And I almost couldn't do it. Like, my brain was, not allowing me to picture that. So I'm just going to probably roll with my brain and comfortably pick the Judgment Day to retain their championships here. And obviously, we already talked about Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins appearing on the Grayson Waller effect. And I think that's going to be one of the best and most entertaining parts of the show. And that's saying a lot, given that there's 2 Elimination Chamber matches on this card. But that is going to do it for me, guys. I do want to thank you for listening to this. If you listened to it before you watched Elimination Chamber, let me know, because I owe you a blizzard from Dairy Queen, or I don't know, maybe a lawn mow, I'll mow your lawn or something like that. I don't know. You're clearly a loyal listener, though, and I definitely appreciate you. And if you're listening to this even after Elimination Chamber, you're just as important. So just let me know, because I definitely want to give you guys a shout out if you are making this show part of your weekly routine, even the weeks where it's weird like this, where you got to wake up early for the next day. And I don't know, this was just strange. The more that I do this show, the earlier it seems like pretty soon they're going to have a pay-per-view just start immediately after SmackDown goes off the air. Bam, 9 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central, 9:30 Central. We're going to start this pay-per-view in Egypt or something like that. Who knows what WWE is going to do next, but thank you guys so much for listening. I am about to go to bed. It is 11:43 p.m. I don't get to sleep in no matter what time I go to sleep, so I'd better try to get as much as I possibly can. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a damn good weekend. Enjoy Elimination Chamber and whatever else it is that you're doing. Walk passionately in the direction of your dreams, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.